Greetings, this is Tim Stevens from Granger Community Church in Indiana, and you can connect with me at leadingsmart.com if you're so inclined. Let's talk about game changers for a second. I'm going to talk about 4 or 5 of these that have been significant in my life. First one, 1981, was the year I gave my life to Jesus. Now that's not the year that I accepted Jesus as my personal Savior. It is the year, though, that made the difference. The year that I decided I was giving it all to Him. I was probably in 7th or 8th grade in middle school. It was during camp, and after a meeting, sat out on a yellow bus out in a dark field behind the meeting room where we had the service, and this retired Marine named Gene Buchhaus sat with me and my buddy Greg and talked to us about the difference that would be made if we gave our lives to Jesus. I mean, gave our entire lives, our futures, everything to Jesus. That was a game-changing moment for me when I was just a junior high kid. 1988 was another game-changing time in my life. Around that is when I became free from the chains of legalism. Began realizing that performance had nothing to do with Jesus' love for me. That Jesus loved me because of His love, because of who He is, not because of who I am or what I would do. It was kind of a grace awakening, if I can borrow that title from Charles Swindoll. And it was a game-changing time. 1994 was another game-changing time. I think that's when I first, around that time, realized, believed, began to make it part of my life that the local church is the hope of the world. I reoriented my life around that. I quit what I was doing and I joined the staff of a local church because I believed that if we could make a difference in a community for the long haul in people's lives, then that's where it was at. That's what was going to make the difference. And so that was a game-changing time in my life. Around 2000, may have been a little before that, was this whole concept of family. Now, I'd been married many years. We had a few kids at that point. But sometime around 2000 or so, we had 3 kids. We had a 4th on the way. I just began not just to give lip service to the fact that family's first, but I just began to change my life around that and realize that if I do nothing else, the most important thing that I can do is pour my life into and around my wife and our 4 children. And it wasn't a moment necessarily, but it was a gradual learning to the point where it's how I live my life now. Let me just say something for a minute to young leaders. I know a lot of young pastors, church leaders are watching or participating today. And there's times you've got little kids at home, and there are times when it is just about to kill you. When you go to bed at night and you're totally exhausted, when you feel like it's everything, it's pulling you, especially if you have more than one, where you're being pulled in 1 or 2 or 3 directions, and it's just a constant vortex of need that you can hardly meet. And you feel like you're saying the same things over and over and over again. We're just beyond that now. Our youngest is 9, our oldest is 17, and let me just say, keep at it. Don't give up. Your investment in that time, even though it's taking everything out of you, pays off in the long term. We are having the time of our lives now that our kids are teenagers. Not every day, but a lot of days, because we spent the time, the thankless hours and energy-draining time when the kids were little. And that's important. Another game-changing time is right now, 2010, maybe 2009, starting about a year ago. And that's just rethinking church. I am realizing that we won't reach our world, that in our setting in Granger, we won't reach our community unless we figure out different ways to do it. Right now, the strategy in most communities is get people to come to the box, and we'll hold great services and we'll have life-changing transformation, and that works for a bunch of people. But I'm realizing the game-changing moment for me is realizing that's not working for everyone. And the percentage of people it's not working for is growing bigger, and the percentage of people it is working for is growing smaller. And that's a game changer for me personally. It's becoming a game changer for our church here at Granger as well, and it's changing how we look at the future. Finally, books have been a game changer for me. Now, I'm a practical guy. I like practical books. I don't really live in the world of philosophy and theory very well. That's just me. So most of the books that have changed my life are game changers, are practical books. And I hate to come across arrogant, but a lot of the game-changing books are ones that I've personally written that have really changed my life. Let me just give you a couple examples. This is one I partnered with Leadership Network on. It's called The Elephant in the Boardroom. And it's a niche book. I accept that fact because it really only impacts or has applicability to churches that are near zoos that are dealing with some kind of catastrophe. There's another book I wrote recently called Sticky Beams. I'm into construction. I like thinking about how you can build churches, and this is all about church construction and pests, insects, things like that. There's a book I partnered with Alan Hirsch on called Untamed. And you know, if you've seen a picture of Alan Hirsch, you've met him, you know, he's got the hair like this. And so we were kind of the extremes on that. He uses me as a case study for the way hair care should be in church leadership. And then the last book I've most recently written is a book called Plan B. And it's what to do when your worship leader doesn't show up at the time and place that you thought he would. I mean, how do you deal with that? And that's just something practical. So there's game changer books as well. So that's everything from here in Granger, Indiana. Thanks for these few minutes.